Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dhammaya, Namo Sanghaya. My respects to the Triple Gem, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and my greetings to everyone joining us here today. I am Bhikkhuni Kachayana. I'm joined here by Bhikkhuni Tavira. Happy to see also online here, Venerable Fatima, and I think probably joining us on YouTube is our founding abbess Ayatollah. So greetings also, Aye.
We have two anagarikas here off screen. You can't see.
Need to turn on your mic. And yes, also a couple anagarikas here in the room with us, as well as our dear tech support, Paula. And so welcome to all of you. And welcome. This evening is, we're coming up on the full moon of the month of Magasira, the Magasira Punami. And this full moon is remembered as the lunar anniversary of the arrival of the Arahant Sanghamitta Theri in Sri Lanka. So we're going to hear in full about her story a little later. I think most of you have probably heard at least a little bit about this before. And if you've been following our programs or following us on Facebook over the past month, then we've been getting little tidbits now and then about where is Sanghamitta on her journey. You know, she's left India and she's on her way to Sri Lanka. So she's carrying with her the Bodhi tree, a sapling from the original Bodhi tree that was the site of the Buddha's awakening. She carried with her to Sri Lanka, and it's still growing there today in Anuradhapura. Was planted, and also she brought with her the Bhikkhuni Sangha. She brought with her 11 Bhikkhunis who then established Bhikkhuni Sangha in Sri Lanka and assisted to establish Buddhism and the Dhamma in Sri Lanka, from which it has spread out throughout the world, and which we're still benefiting from very much today, here and now. So this is a very auspicious occasion. We want to celebrate her arrival. And so this evening, we're here to commemorate that. And I'm going to hear her full story. Venerable Tavira will share with us a little bit later. And we're going to reflect on what it means to be bringing and carrying and sharing the Dhamma. And so we'll have some discussion time later about this theme of bringing the Dhamma to a new place, sharing it, how to do that in a way it can grow strong and spread and continue. And we'll have some time to think about how that process continues today. And in honor of Great Arahant Theri Sanghamitta. But before all of that, we'd like to start with a little meditation just to arrive and establish ourselves here. So, yeah, and this, again, we're commemorating the arrival of Sanghamitta, Arahant Sanghamitta, on new shores. One of our recent programs, we were commemorating her departure from India. It was the night before her departure. And I invited you to consider, what would it be like to be standing on the shore, ready to board the boat, leave the land of your home, to go somewhere you've never been before. And in fact, she never returned to her homeland after that. She was all prepared on her great mission, ready to set forth on the ship. And I invited you to consider, what would that be like? To stand there at this great transition in one's life. And as had been suggested to me by Ayatollah, then I also invited you to consider, okay, we can think in our own personal conditioning, what does that feel like? But then what would it feel like if you are an arahant? What would that mind state be like? Because she was. She was known to be fully awakened before her departure. What is it like to stand on the shore, fully awake, ready to carry the Dhamma forward to a new place? Can we even imagine what that mind would be like? And now this evening we're commemorating her arrival after the ship ride, coming to a new shore, to the land of Sri Lanka. The king is coming out into the water to receive the Bodhi tree, to greet. There are many people on the shore. There's great celebration. See the arrival. What does it feel like to step off that boat, to arrive there? So for us today, we're also arriving in the present moment here. We're always arriving every moment. Sometimes it feels big and different. There are large transitions. But every moment really is fresh. Every moment is an opportunity to meet something new. Meet it with Dhamma. Bring the best thing we know and to share it. So inviting you in your meditation, just know the body seated here, but know it as if arriving for the first time on a new shore. What is there to see? What is there to know about this body here and now, seated on the cushion or the chair? Feel the body established here, the spine upright, but not tight. Everything relaxing around the solid, strong, balanced center of the spine. Feeling the body expanding and contracting with each breath. Each breath fresh and new. Meeting it as if for the first time. As if with awakened eyes. Good evening, and welcome to everyone. A few more have joined us now. Welcome. And once again, we're celebrating Sanghamitta Day, the arrival of Sanghamitta Theri in Sri Lanka, and everything that has come from that. So much history from that time, which Venerable Tavira is going to tell us about. We celebrate Sanghamitta Day every year, and I think at some point we sort of start assuming that everybody knows the story, but maybe some people don't. We realized that maybe just a basic introduction to who is Sanghamitta and what is her story and why are we celebrating her so many, more than 2,000 years later. So I'm going to invite Venerable Tavira to take it away and tell us that story.
Checking that my sound is working.
Okay, I don't.
Is my sound working?
To press and hold till the little green light comes on. And you should be okay. Try now.
Now is my sound working?
Yes, it's good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. All right, so as Venerable Kachayana said, I'm going to actually just tell the basic story of Sanghamitta Theri. I think we realized last year that maybe we actually had not been doing that clearly, and I think it's good to actually just really look at the whole story. But before I begin that, why are we even talking about this? This is something that Dhammadharini does. We visit these stories and tell these stories of these awakened women from the past. And it's something that Ayattatthaloka is very strong, strongly encourages and strongly promotes. And she does a lot of research herself that she then shares. And I think at first I didn't think a lot about it. It was just kind of something that Dhammadharini does. I really realized, even when I wasn't paying a lot of attention, there's a big difference between kind of having heard these stories and maybe not focusing on them, but kind of knowing they're there. And there's a big difference between knowing that they're there versus never having heard it. And, there's the Arahant Bhikkhunis from the time of the Buddha, and many of them. And, we have stories of many of them, just all different personalities and histories and different paths leading them into the Dhamma and different, speeds of waking up and all of these things. And then also that history continues. And, Venerable Sanghamitta Theri and the Sangha that she founded in Sri Lanka is probably the best documented. But it's important, I think, for us to not just have the example of the Buddha, but also to have these other examples and really diverse examples. For people who are welcomed into the Bhikkhu Sangha, they have this sense, at least, which is maybe not 100% purely accurate, but they have this sense of there's this unbroken, pure lineage stretching back from their preceptor back to the time of the Buddha. And I think in reality, it's probably a little more complicated than that, even for the bhikkhus. But they have this real foundation of, their practice is resting on the practice of their teacher and their teacher's teacher and their teacher's teacher's teacher, stretching back to the time of the Buddha. And this practice can be really difficult, and this path can be challenging. And I think we can all, doubt, can I do it? Do I have the capability? And there's something really strong about saying all of these people before me did it. And they're people who are like me, and I can trust that they were able to do it, and then I am as well. And I think there's so many things where we're like, if we're not sure we can do it and then we give up because we're not sure, then of course we can't do it, right? So, you know, I think to have the persistence and the willingness to continue, I think it really helps to say, you know, there are people before me who were like me, who were able to do it also, and then maybe I am as well. And so I think, you know, for those of us who can't necessarily see ourselves in the examples of the Bhikkhu Sangha, I think it's important for us to know these stories. And the stories that we tell really shape our sense of what's possible. And so I think there's a lot here that can inspire all of us. And so I'm going to share a bit more about Sanghamitta. So who was she? She was the daughter of Emperor Ashoka. He was the emperor of the Mauryan Empire of ancient India. And he famously converted to Buddhism and became just an enormous patron of Buddhism, spreading the Dhamma, you know, founding, paying for monastery, thousands upon thousands of monasteries and monuments and stupas. And his first two children, who he had when he was just a prince, were his son Mahinda and his daughter Sanghamitta. She lived in the 3rd century BCE, so she was born 206 years after the Buddha's parinibbana. So, you know, quite a good amount of time later, but there were still many arahants around actively teaching. And as Venerable Kachina said, you know, what she's most known for is that she traveled to Sri Lanka and brought the Bodhi tree and the Bhikkhuni Sangha to Sri Lanka. So how do we know about her? Her story is actually really quite well documented in the Pali text chronicles, Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa, and then the extended Mahavamsa, and the Vinaya commentary, Samantapasadika, and the Mahabodhivamsa. And mainly what I looked at in preparing for this was a version of the extended Mahavamsa, you know, excerpts from the extended Mahavamsa that tell her story, which Bhikkhu Anandajoti has published as this really wonderful book. The translation, he translated that into English. And it's, you know, the story of Sanghamitta is not the primary focus of the Mahavamsa. It's mainly about the kings of Sri Lanka and their history and the establishment of Buddhism there. But there's actually quite a lot about her in it. It talks about her birth, her going forth into monastic life, her journey to Sri Lanka, and the role that she played in establishing Buddhism in Sri Lanka and her passing away. So the telling of the story here in this presentation and the quotes that I include are from this version in this book published by Bhikkhu Anandajoti. And so again, we're at Dhammadharini, we're telling these stories and remembering these anniversaries through the year. So what anniversaries do we remember for Sanghamitta? And it's mostly her journey from India to Sri Lanka. And in the Mahavamsa, it actually records kind of step by step the stages of her journey as she's traveling. And what we're remembering right now is her arrival in Sri Lanka with the Bodhi tree, which is on the full moon of usually December. And this is Unvatpoya for our Sri Lankan friends. And the Mahavamsa also records her passing away, her parinibbana, which is on the Asayuja Masang Sukha Paka Atami, the waxing half moon Uposita, which this year was September 29th. So you may remember we also had honored her in a program at that time this year. So what was her story? So she, as he said, was one of the first two children of the Emperor Ashoka. And at one point in his life, he was this enormous patron of the Dhamma, and he at one point dedicated the gift of 84,000 monasteries and reliquary stupas. But that wasn't enough. He wanted to become a true relative of the Sasana with the gift of his own flesh and blood. And so he asked his first two children, his son Mahinda, who was 20, and his daughter Sanghamitta, who was 18, he asked them to go forth into monastic life. And it sounds like they were happy to do so. And in time, they both became arahants. And the Mahavamsa says, these two were lights of the awakened one's dispensation. About 13 years after that, the third council had been held and missionaries were being sent out to the border areas. So Sanghamitta's brother, the Arahant Mahinda Thero, was sent to the island of Lanka, where he converted King Devanampiyatissa and many others. Very successful, really, that land was very ready to receive the Dhamma and took it up quickly. And so Mahinda was teaching in the king's garden to many people, including many women from the great families, it tells us. And many of the people hearing these teachings were entering the path to awakening, were becoming stream enterers. Queen Anula, together with 500 women, came in order to worship the elders. And after listening to the Dhamma teaching with faithful minds, they entered the second path and fruit. So they became once returners, Sakadagami. So having started to wake up, Queen Anula and those 500 women wished to go forth into monastic life. And so they expressed this to the king. And the king immediately goes to Mahinda Thero and says, Venerable Sir, Queen Anula desires to go forth together with 500 women. Please give them the going forth. And Mahinda replies that it's not suitable for him to give the going forth to women, but he has a younger sister, Sanghamitta, who is a famous and learned Bhikkhuni. And so Mahinda recommends that King Devanampiyatissa request that Emperor Ashoka send his daughter, Sanghamitta, as well as the southern branch of the Bodhi tree. And so King Devanampiyatissa sent his nephew, the minister Adita, to make this request of the Emperor Ashoka. And while he was away, then Queen Anula with 500 young women, and together with another 500 women of the harem, having undertaken the 10 precepts, pure in the yellow robes, being in training, looked forward to the going forth, looked for the coming of the elder nun. So they were already shaving their hair and wearing robes in preparation. So the minister Adita goes to India and makes this request of the Emperor Ashoka and then of Sanghamitta herself. And she immediately goes to her father and tells him, I will go. Very many people, daughters of good families, with Anula at their head, desiring the going forth or looking forward to my journey. So Venerable Kachina was asking us to consider, what would it feel like to be preparing for this journey? And at least the way it's told, it sounds like she just had this immediate response of, this request has been made and I will go. And the Emperor Ashoka really, the chronicle says he expressed a lot of grief. He'd already lost his son had already gone, and as well as his grandson, and now his daughter was intending to go. But she says, my brother's word has importance for me, King, together with the request of the great queen and the 1,000 women. Further, I suppose, this is not just my brother's word, and many are waiting for the going forth, which I also desire to give, great king, and so now I must go. And I think this is a good place to pause. And reading this story, I really was reflecting on how kind of straightforward it is. This Queen Anula makes the request, and King Devanampiyatissa immediately says, yes, yes, we'll find a way for you to go forth. And Mahinda Thero, says, yes, how can I make this happen? We'll send for my sister. And she says, yes, I'll go. And Emperor Ashoka, even despite his grief, he also supports and allows her to go. And it's both kind of the fact that it's very clearly these women, making their decisions and understanding what is good for them, and really like having their own agency in choosing this path. as well as these very powerful men running countries who are saying, yes, we will facilitate your aspirations. And it's told just very simply and straightforwardly. And so the intention was to send both Sanghamitta and the southern branch of the Bodhi tree. This is the tree under which the Buddha experienced his awakening. And so then they hold this great festival honoring and worshiping the Bodhi tree and preparing it for this journey. The worship of the beautiful, noble, excellent Bodhi tree, with many and extensive flags, flowers, and fruits at its head, opened the minds of men and protective gods, like a lotus opened by the rays of the sun without any effort on its part. And here, this is a painting, a mural of Venerable Sanghamitta traveling with the Bodhi tree. And so here's a map of their journey. This is prepared by Ayatthaloka. They journey first to the port, and the tree is placed on the ship, joined by Sanghamitta Theri and 11 other bhikkhunis. And then they make this journey by ocean. And Chronicle tells us how Nagas threaten them on their journey, and Sanghamitta subdues them with her psychic powers. And then they arrive in Sri Lanka. And you can see here, this is a very famous painting of the arrival. And so Sanghamitta on the ship with the Bodhi tree, and then at the bottom right there, you can see the king. The king of Sri Lanka himself has gone out into the water to receive the Bodhi tree. And from there, they journey overland to the capital. And it talks about how there's just this enormous festival and the decorations and the preparing of the road for this journey. And you can see here they arrive at the capital, Anuradhapura, and the king himself plants the Bodhi tree. And then Queen Anula and those 1,000 women received the going forth as they had requested from Sanghamitta Theri. And those 1,000 nuns, after developing insight in no long time, attained the state of worthiness. So this is just this very, very strong, initial foundation establishing this community of bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. And they always make it sound very easy, but they all very quickly wake up and establish a really strong community that then continues. The chronicles tell us how one day the king goes to himself to pay respects to Sanghamitta Theri, and finds that he doesn't find her where he expects to find her. She's left her previous dwelling because it was too crowded. And so then the king builds her a monastery in a more secluded place. And I included this again, just it seems so straightforward of the king going and paying respects to this very elder, respected, highly revered teacher, and saying, how can I support you and the practice of your bhikkhunis, and then build the monastery that's suitable for their practice. And just appreciating, I certainly didn't grow up with stories about kings honoring great respected women spiritual teachers, and just appreciating this history, and and also realizing that the modern reestablishment of the Bhikkhuni Sangha has started in Sri Lanka. And I think a huge part of that is that people did grow up with these stories. And it wasn't a big shift, or it wasn't as big a shift for them to understand the value of women holding these roles. So 60 years after he arrived in Sri Lanka, Mahinda Thero passed away. And 59 years after her arrival, Sanghamitta Theri passed away. And in each case, the king at that time, King Uttiya, who was the younger brother of King Devanampiyatissa, he made offerings and paid respects and decorated the whole island of Lanka. And at the place of her cremation, inside of the Bodhi tree, a stupa was established. The Lord of the world, Uttiya, also had a sanctuary built in that place. Having taken her relics, he deposited them in the sanctuary, and he worshipped there day by day with all kinds of offerings. And you can see here a picture of the stupa, which was partially restored and reopened in 2009. And then finally, about the tree. So the tree that she brought is still alive today, the Anuradhapura Sri Mahabodhi tree. And this is said to be the oldest human planted tree where we know the planting date that's still alive. And then the original tree in Bodh Gaya passed away, and a cutting from this tree was then used to reestablish the tree that grows today in Bodh Gaya. And so that is the basic story.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much.
Right, and so part of this story is this really successful transmission of these teachings. And Mahinda Thero traveled and found a very receptive, found the people of Sri Lanka very receptive, and was able to teach very successfully. And then the women requested the going forth, and Sanghamitta Theri went and was able to very successfully establish her community of Bhikkhunis there. And maybe we aren't trying to establish Buddhism in entirely new lands that have never known it before. But I think all of us who, we practice and we find a lot of benefit for our own lives in these teachings. And that might be whether we have really, as those of us here in robes have, really fully devoted our lives to living this path as fully as we can. Or maybe we consider ourselves Buddhist, but are living out in the world. Or maybe we don't consider ourselves Buddhist and just find some benefit in the meditation or in, learning something from this perspective on the world. And, I certainly know for me, the world is in a lot of turmoil at the moment. I don't know if it's, I think the world is always in turmoil. Maybe it seems worse than usual at the moment. It may not be true, but and for me, I think I can't imagine looking out at that turmoil and not having this foundation of these teachings and this practice to, even when we can lose that foundation at times, to at least have it and be able to come back to it and have a way to kind of recenter ourselves and have something that's, gives us a strong place to stand, and from that place to be able to work with all of the things coming at us from many directions. And so I had this question of okay, for those of us who found our way to these teachings and have found a lot of benefit from them, how can we share that with people in a way that's actually beneficial? I think everyone these days, all of us have all kinds of voices trying to convince us of all kinds of things. And, I think we don't want to be adding to that cacophony of people trying to convince other people of their views. What is the way of holding these teachings and bringing them to others who may not have heard them before, and doing that in a way that's genuinely beneficial? And, I had this question, and I thought it would be good for us to just talk about, how have we done this, and what has been good and what has not been good, and what has been successful. Right. Bukachina reminds me that we were supposed, before we do that, we were supposed to hear from Dom. Is he online? I'm just trying to find my...
Yes, Venerable.
Yes. Thank you. So we have representing the Dhammadharini Support Foundation, who is the nonprofit that supports our community here. We have Dom, who's our treasurer and a friend for many years. And so yes, just before we get into the discussion, inviting Dom to speak on behalf of the Support Foundation.
Thank you, Venerable. So, hi everybody. Nice to be here with you, if only virtually. So, yes, I am the treasurer. I'm from the Bay Area originally. Lived there for the first 34 years of my life. I met Ayatollah at Wat Bhutanusarn in Fremont in, I think, 2007. And I have been involved with Dhammadharini since. For various reasons, I currently live in Utah, where it is snowy right now. And despite living far away, I still try to remain connected. And I'm honored to currently be the treasurer. So I was back most recently in May to go to Aranyabodhi, which is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places in the world in more ways than one. We'll come back to Aranyabodhi. So I I'd like to talk very briefly about my thoughts about where we stand, sort of big picture, and then a little bit more specific. So I get really big picture, and to carry on the theme that Venerable Tavra was just on. I've been recently reflecting on the arising and the transmission of Buddhism. And if you think about it and read about it, this strikes me how fortunate we are that we are where we are. I mean, a lot of things had to go right for Buddhism to be established in the first place. At the time and place of the Buddha was essentially unique in world history, at least the current version of the world history. But the Buddha took birth, strove for Nibbana, became the great Samana, established the Sangha, spread it to Sri Lanka, as Venerable just mentioned, where it is strong, in one very important way, stronger now than it has been in a long time. And throughout Buddhism also spread throughout Southeast Asia. But for various reasons, it largely died out in its homeland of India. Although there are resurgences within India, of course, and Dhammadharini is involved with that. So to get a little bit closer to the point, there are influences tending to cause the sasana to decline and influences tending to strengthen it, sort of at any time, right? In my opinion, the rebirth of the Bhikkhuni Sangha is a great strengthening influence. I see it as reestablishing what the Buddha wanted, the Fourfold Sangha, and I'm very happy to support it to the extent that I can. I think it's rare to be able to have such an impact on the world. And we have that opportunity now. Venerable Tavra is saying the world's very unsettled. And of course, it often is, always is, really, to a greater or lesser degree. But this is something positive in the world. This is something where the trajectory is upward. And I think we can all be happy about that. So a little bit about the details of the treasury from me, the treasurer. So about a year ago, the situation was worrisome, but things have improved to some extent. For now, while we can't do everything that we feel that we should, at least not immediately, we are not as worried. But there are certain projects which we feel that are important, which require special fundraising. And those of you who got and read the email from Director of Development Nuchida, you've seen them listed. So of course, in truth, the most useful kind of donation is to the general fund, because then the support foundation and the Bhikkhuni Sangha have the most flexibility. However, there are certain expenditures which we need to do and which we have been putting off because the financial situations have not been that solid in recent years. And one of them is the fire abatement work regarding tree clearing, tree trimming, no major clear cutting or anything like that, but there's certain overgrowth. Obviously, we love that forest and we want to keep it healthy, but there's fire abatement that has to be done. And so we are trying to raise 20,000 to complement existing funds for that. A big part of that is to make it easier for firefighters to access the buildings and to, in case of emergency, help get anyone out who needs help getting out. If we can raise 20,000 for that, we will be able to complete it in 2026. And this is something we've been putting off for the last 2 years, so we would like to finally get this done. So if anyone feels inspired, there is a particular link in the email from Nuchida that you can use to donate directly to that. Another important goal is to pre-fund the insurance for the monastery in particular. So this is at Pengrove, where many of you have been, I'm sure. So have I. It has to be insured. It has to come out of the treasury. So that is also something that we would be very happy to be able to fund with donations specific for that. And then the third particular item for end of year dana is Bhikkhuni transportation. So we have a goal of 10,000 for this fund. These funds are both for transportation and to allow Dhammadharini to be actively engaged and connected with our local and international communities, including in India. And so we, as Dhammadharini, so I can speak on behalf of the Support Foundation, but of course the heavy lifting is being done by the monastics themselves, are supporting the re-emergence of the Bhikkhuni Sangha in its homeland of India. And so this is one of the things that the Bhikkhuni Transportation Fund will be used to do, is to help facilitate travel of Indian bhikkhunis here and possibly for our monastics to go there as well. So the Bhikkhuni Transportation Fund is important to help the Bhikkhuni Sangha globally, because Northern California is actually one of a very important center of the Bhikkhuni Sangha globally, in particular Dhammadharini. And so women from around the world are inspired to come, and the Bhikkhuni Transportation Fund can make that possible. So those are the end of year priorities that we wanted to discuss. That's all I really have to say. If anyone has any questions, you can email me specifically if you care to at, I believe it's dhammadharini.treasure@gmail.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Dom. I appreciate you joining, and I know it's a bit later where you are, so understand if you have to go soon, but very glad
I
you
will,
could join us.
yes.
Right. Okay, so then now turning to our discussion, yeah, about how, yeah, and I guess I wonder, is there anything special, as Dom said, we are, Northern California is the center in some ways of, a concentration of Theravada bhikkhunis that don't exist in other places necessarily.
They're migrating north, though. They're
True, they are migrating north.
to
Yes.
Washington State now.
There's a northern migration of bhikkhunis up towards Washington and Oregon. But still, here on the west coast of the U.S., there's actually quite a number of Theravada bhikkhunis, and not very many elsewhere in the country. And as Dom said, we have monastics coming here from all over the world to spend time here. Because we also have a bit of a larger community than in many other places. So do we have a special, just in general, how can we be sharing the Dhamma with others? And is there anything special about how we personally can be sharing the Dhamma with others? I feel like I've been talking a lot. Do you want to say anything about Avakachayana to get us started?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you had this theme as part of like holiday and meeting with family and friends, and it's part of your inspiration,
right.
if I recall correctly. Like, how do we share the Dhamma with our family and friends?
Without annoying them.
Without annoying them, yes. And yeah, so it's, you know, on the one hand, we have a great exemplar like Sanghamitta Theri, but we're not ourselves the daughters of emperors, and you know, maybe we're not arahants either. And so then, you know, do we just have to sort of honor from afar, and or is there something that we also can do to be part of this, to feel like we're part of one connected flow, that we are, you know, continuing in the work that Sanghamitta Theri, well, that the Buddha initiated, and that she was part of the flow of spreading that in the world, and that are we also part of that today, and if so, how? And you know, the Buddha didn't generally go out and proselytize, right? He was not trying to, you know, people came to him. They would come to him and they would ask him questions, and he would engage with anybody who came. But he was generally not going out and seeking out people to try to convince. It was just whoever was inspired, or whoever he knew was ready to be hearing the Dhamma. So they say that he had the aloka, his vision, his light, that he could look around the world and see who was ready to awaken and to hear the Dhamma. And you know, we might not have that. So yeah, it's just this question of, okay, how do we share the Dhamma? How do we know who's ready to hear and who's not? And I think it really comes down to just sort of, you know, like as monastics, we go out in the world and we wear robes and people see us, and some are curious and some are not. And but those who are curious, then they might come and say something and ask something and try to find out something that they didn't before. And kind of how I see us being of service in the world is that we can do that, and then those who do have the interest come and talk to us, and hopefully we're inspiring in some way. We're trying to train and practice for that. Anyway, these are just a couple thoughts to continue to frame our conversation, but we really want it to be open to everyone here. And I especially want to invite any other monastics online with us. I believe Venerable Satima, are you still here?
Yes.
Venerable Satima, do you have any thoughts about this? As one of our, well, now you're a northern migrating Bhikkhuni, you're up in Washington State at this point, at the new Parayana Vihara there, having previously spent some time with Dhammadharini and Bhavana Society and other places. Welcome, Venerable. Happy to have you with us. And yeah, I know you've been in many communities, and I know you love to share the Dhamma. And I'm wondering, you know, just if you have any thoughts about this topic, about how do we carry forward what Sanghamitta Theri did in the world? How can we inspire? How can we share, you know, if this thing that we know for ourselves, to whatever degree we do, is wonderful? How can we share that? So welcoming whatever thoughts you have about that, and then we'll open it up to everybody.
Well, first, most respectful Dhamma greetings from Ayananda Bodhi and from the entire Parayana Vihara community up here in Port Townsend, Washington. And greetings to Venerable Ayatata Loka and the entire Dhammadharini Bhikkhuni Sangha. And very warm greetings to all friends joining this evening from near and far, both monastic and lay friends. So I'd just like to request permission of the Sangha to just offer a few reflections this evening and appreciating very much this topic of sharing the gift of Dhamma with those who are ready to hear it, and not pushing the Dhamma on those who aren't seeking it out. And this is because I think most of us probably don't have to look very far back into our own past to recall maybe the person who's inspiring presence, who's inspiring Dhamma practice, and who's very clear. The proclamation of the Dhamma touched us in some very deep way, maybe so much so that our lives started to move in a very different direction. And maybe for most of us, our hearts were transformed for the better. But whoever it was, whenever it was that happened, we tend to remember that person very fondly. And at the same time, we also might recall the person whose presence or whose proclamation of some view or some doctrine or some dogmatic argument put us off in such a way that, and to such extent that maybe our hearts just kind of closed down. I don't know, for me, I think there can be people who 30, 40, 50 years later, whose hearts still haven't opened back up after such an encounter. So it just seems like this topic this evening is pointing to the importance of our speech and how immediately impactful it is. But I think when we start to really and rightly understand this factor of the Eightfold Path called right speech, we become more careful about what we say, if we say it, how we say it, and we start to attune to what forces in the mind are motivating our speech altogether. So I was thinking, this may be why the Buddha described a teaching on social and community harmony, and in which he laid down very clear guidelines for speaking, and particularly when speaking to 5 kinds of people is considered to be appropriate, and when speaking to another 5 kinds of people he considered to be inappropriate, having compared one type of person with another. So yes, families, my family, your family, most families may be gathering this holiday season. And it seems like it'll make this topic a bit more immediate in one sense, especially, as Dhamma cultivators, we're planning to visit and speak with family and friends this time of year. But really, I think the teaching of the Dhamma is akalika, it's timeless, because truth is always true, regardless of the setting or who we're with, the era in question. And the teaching I'd just like to point to very briefly, if you permit me to do so, is just coming from the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of the Five, number 157, wherein it said the Buddha proclaimed that it's inappropriate actually to talk on faith to someone without faith. And it's inappropriate to talk on virtuous behaviors to an immoral person. And it's inappropriate to talk on learning to someone who has little learning. And inappropriate to talk on generosity to a person who's a miser. And inappropriate to talk on wisdom to an unwise person. And why is that? He says it's because when talk on faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and wisdom is being given, a person without those things loses his temper, becomes irritated, hostile, stubborn, and he displays anger, hatred, and bitterness. Therefore, talk on these things, these 5 qualities, is wrongly addressed to a person devoid of those things. But at the same time, the Buddha is declaring that it is appropriate to talk on faith, virtue, learning, generosity, and wisdom to a person who is endowed with those things because they possess them, because they're endowed with them. They do not display anger, hatred, and bitterness. And so given these guidelines, I was thinking, how might it be possible to make the Dhamma in us readily accessible to people who are ready to hear it without activating anger, hostility, bitterness in those people who are not? One very strong possibility comes to mind, and as we're talking about the lineage of the Dhamma. It was in his last birth, one of the chief disciples of the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta, saw a Buddhist monk called Venerable Assaji for the first time. And he was so awestruck by his comportment. He said that he approached Venerable Assaji and said to him right away, without having heard his voice, "Who is your teacher? And what does he teach?" Venerable Sariputta already had these 5 qualities that I just mentioned. So when he recognized these qualities in Venerable Assaji, not anything that Venerable Assaji had said to him initially, simply he embodied these qualities in his comportment. It was enough. It seemed to be enough for him to approach him and get the teaching that set him on the course to full awakening. So this is one way, I think, maybe a primary way I think we can consider how we can share the Dhamma wherever we are, at any time and on any occasion. And that's through our comportment, how we behave ourselves, how we carry the Dhamma, how we wear the robes, how we carry the form of a Buddhist disciple. I think this comportment has its own power, and it can attract to us those people who are ready to hear the Dhamma, ready to see the Dhamma. And it can open it, the door, the window of their heart all by itself. And so maybe we don't have to say so much. You know, what if all we have to do is to attract to ourselves those people who are ready to hear the teachings, is to become one with the teachings that we already know, to embody those teachings that we've been, all of us, been so fortunate to receive. You know, and I keep wondering, maybe more and more, what if all that's needed is for us to give ourselves fully to the Dhamma, to surrender to the Dhamma, to trust the Dhamma in us, and that if it's unimpeded in us, it will light the way for those with eyes to see. In the same way that the Christians, we had a saying in Christianity, that God manifests as bread for those people who are hungry. So I'd just like to close just these few remarks by just reminding you of something, a story somebody told me. We saw a monk at some temple at some point. Monk was walking very slowly, very mindfully, very carefully through the Dhamma hall, walking very mindfully through the Dhamma sala, mindfully receiving his meal, picking up the bowl, carrying the bowl through the line to collect his alms food. But as soon as he hit the trail leading back to his kuti, because he thought no one was looking, he dropped his pretense of composure and let his body go all wild and loose, just like he had walked as a layperson. So I'm reflecting in this topic that what if all our family and friends really need from us is our authenticity of practice? And what if all we need to do to give them the gift of Dhamma is to get out of the way and let the Dhamma live us totally, fully, without holding anything back?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much for that reflection.
Yeah, beautifully said.
So, yeah. And with that, I think we'd like to open it up to anyone who has thoughts on this topic, on how we can share, or any experiences you'd like to share. Like, have you tried to share the Dhamma with somebody, and did it go? How did it go?
Or how did someone effectively share the Dhamma with you?
Right. Or or yes, anything along those lines. Questions or sharing or reflections. We want to open it up to all of you here. Welcome to raise your hand on Zoom, or let us know somehow that you'd like to speak. Chintana, yes. please.
Thank you so much for that wonderful opening. And Venerable Satima, it's very nice to hear what you have to say. I was a lot younger, and I was with my daughter. I had to find a new place to live due to my circumstances, and it was scary. And I'd just gotten my teaching credential. And my new principal, who hired me, said, "There's a wonderful place for you to have your child. It's a monastery, Montessori." And I took my daughter over there, and I was so stressed by teaching and by trying to, appease everyone. It was crazy. And I would go into this monastery, and it would be a Montessori, a little, 3-year-olds playing with toys and screaming, hitting each other, behaving, doing all the things that little kids do. And these women were just so peaceful and kind and loving, and corrected these children with love. It wasn't what I was used to seeing. And so I asked this woman who owned Little Flower Montessori, how do you do this? How are you so calm? And she told me about the Buddha and the Dhamma. And she said, on Friday nights, there's an American group. You should go. And that was like 30 years ago. That's where I met ABS Temple and Bhante Sila Wimala. So by going and meditating and learning the Dhamma, I was transformed. But I just wanted to share that, out of this, I was like, I was not put together well. In fact, my Dhamma name is Chintana, because it means monkey mind. So I was very scattered. And the practice, it helped me enormously. I don't know where I'd be today if I didn't have it. So just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you.
Mhm. Wonderful. Anyone else sharing? Yes. Richard, yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. What was that sutta that Venerable Satima was referring to? Is she still available?
Venerable Satima, are you here? We didn't catch your reference.
It was Anguttara Nikaya 5s.
Right. Well, maybe she's stepped away for a moment, but yes, it was in the chapter of fives, and 5 people
All
it's
right.
suitable to speak to or not suitable to speak to. Yes, I think I have read that one before, but I don't know the number offhand. So, yeah. All right. Anything else?
Thank you. Yeah, that's all I
That's
wanted.
all for now. All right. Just looking at the reference. Anyone else?
Daniel has a hand raised.
Daniel has a hand raised. Okay.
Thank you. I feel a little silly going because Venerable Satima really put it quite well. It feels hard to add to that, but I think, one of you, I believe, used the word like cacophony of views or something like that in describing the kind of state of things, which I think is very true. I think that describes it quite accurately. And I think sometimes maybe we underestimate the power of kindness because we don't realize how rare it is for people to experience it in their day-to-day life. And so for me, at least in my own, practice, you don't necessarily have to be some super enlightened being. Even very simple acts of kindness and metta, I think, are quite remarkable for most people, and they notice and respond to it. And I think for me, that has been the most um, kind of influential to others is also them noticing how I have changed and wanting to know what's that about, what's different. And yeah, I think I guess what I'm just trying to sum up is not to underestimate, the ability of kind of simple acts of kindness or simple acts of virtue and how rare those are, I think, to most people and how noticeable they are to them. That it doesn't have to be something dramatic or deeply penetratively insightful, that it can be quite simple. So thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, sadhu. Thank you.
Mhm.
Rena.
Hello, everyone.
Wow.
I'm getting over being a little sick. Uh, but what I was going to add was, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just this idea of acceptance. Because if my initial reaction, um, when I heard, speaking to suitable people was like, but that person doesn't have wisdom. I should tell them about wisdom. Or that person doesn't have faith. I need to help them out. And like that's like the immediate whoops. So so it's like twofold. It's like really being aware of my own agenda. And like, am I doing this for me or am I doing it for them? And the idea of acceptance, um, like being able to accept people and their suffering and their not okayness and still love them and still give them love. Um, it's an example I can give is with my mom. Um, yeah, just she has a lot of trouble with different things, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna I'm gonna help her out and tell her what to do. So yeah, so that didn't go so well. But if I go there and I'm just there, kind of open to mostly to whatever she needs and whichever direction she wants to go and however much she wants to go, without an agenda on my end. And I have to bring up my cats because I learned so much from them. I have a cat next to me right now, actually. They do this thing where they just come and hey, sit next to you, and it just means so much to me. Like they don't come and tell me a story or they don't come and give me a massage. They just, especially since I've been sick, they just come and they just sleep on the bed with me. And it's similar to how I think I maybe approach my mom or other people that are suffering. Because is I just I'm just there with them. That's my main intention, and that seems to work the best. Um, as opposed to, yeah, going there and fixing it for them. And I will mention one other thing, I think, especially in our culture, something that hasn't worked is like having an intellectual understanding, conversations. Uh, one, I'm not learned enough about the Dhamma, to list things and explain things. It's kind of more natural for me. But I just get caught in thought traps or intellectual traps, and and then there's like questions about monastics. But wait, well, how come they can't cut down plants, but they can? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Um, so I found intellectual discussions are not really helpful. Um, so it's more back to that leading by example, but even more than that, it's like leading um, with an open heart and a lot of acceptance for allowing people to not be, letting people be how they are and evolve at their own pace, in their own way. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Glad you're feeling a bit better. Let's see, Juno has a hand raised. Is Juno calling in from Aranyabodhi?
Mm.
Thank you. I hope I'm not too
Oh.
You have a questionable
choppy
internet connection
for
there.
you all. I am so new. Ooh, for me, so new to Buddhism, I think that I look for people walking the walk, talking the talk, doing the work. And I think it was Karina in the last documentary said about the Dhammadharini people that they're just kind and they're kind to everybody. And when I first came in and volunteered, I saw a bunch of really nice, beautiful beings doing beautiful things. What's drawing me in. So, yeah, I don't really need the Dhamma talks so much as just kind of role models, being good people, doing the hard work, and getting calmer, and getting training themselves, and that's what attracts me to you all. So thank you, and I'm going to go because I think my connection is very bad.
Well, your image was frozen, but your voice came through clearly, so that's good. Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's funny. I'm just reflecting. Like Venerable Kachayana said, as monastics, we go out in the world and we are very visibly representing something, and people don't necessarily know what. Depending on where you are, people may not know
Hare Krishna.
people, right? We get
Yeah.
called Hare Krishnas. People just have no idea,
Mhm.
what tradition we're from. But they know you're something, and it's probably religious,
Mhm.
and maybe they're curious. It was funny. It was almost, I had almost a bit of a, not exactly a hesitation, but it was something that when I was considering monastic life, I think I was a little sad about, which is that, as a layperson, as a serious practitioner, and I was working in a professional environment. I was an engineer, and spending a lot of time with people in that environment where we weren't talking about our faith. It was like I almost felt like I could be sort of like undercover, and it was like people would notice something. Often the comment I would get would like, how do you stay awake in the long, boring meetings? I would get comments like that, but people would notice that there was something different. And they would ask me about it. And I would go on my vacation time, I would go on retreats. And so I would at least tell people that much, I'm going on a meditation retreat for my vacation next week. And so like you said, some people are completely not curious and do not care. And some people are interested and ask questions and say, oh, I'm Catholic and I know a monastic, or I have a little bit of meditation experience, or like what's meditation good for? People would ask these questions. And there was something I kind of liked about, someone who would never walk up to a monastic in public and talk to them, but would ask a layperson who they knew, who they noticed something kind of different about. That I was a little sad about, like I can't be undercover anymore. But then there's obviously a huge benefit in being very openly, visibly showing a different way of being in the world, that then people who do have that curiosity can approach you.
Yeah, for me that was an important one when I did, because I was living in the monastery for a year and a half as a lay steward before I ordained. And one of the things that convinced me that I wanted to actually go for it was like, I walk around the world with these monastics and people react to them differently. Like, and I want to know what that's like. I don't want to be in hiding anymore. I want to experience that because it's so sort of interesting. And, and I want to be visibly part of that. Yeah, but you do get all sorts of very interesting reactions. There's,
As an Anagarika, I learned you have really interesting conversations in the produce section at the grocery store, where people come up and tell you stories about
and people tell you stories, or I want to fist bump you.
I have not had that
I've
experience.
had several people like, hey, are you a monk? It's like, yes, I'm a monk, fist bump. Okay. This kind of thing. And maybe that's as far as it goes for somebody, that's the end of their curiosity, is they just want to fist bump you. But even that, it's something. It's like you're representing something different in the world. And I remember one time I was walking down the street just here outside our monastery, and I think I was in Anagarika at the time. I was in white robes, and some lady driving past was like slammed her foot on the brake and wanted to talk to me urgently. And she was like, I see you walking around here. And I'm just like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking when you walk around? And she just like couldn't imagine what it would be like to be, I don't know, committed to this, or I don't know what, but she just was very curious. And, she was clearly in some sort of state where she was in need of something, something different than what was going on in her life. So I talked to her a little bit, and just, I told her about metta, and it like blew her mind that you could be kind, even to yourself. Um, and, and I never saw her again. She said she was going to come by. She lives in the neighborhood, but I never saw her again. But sometimes that wasn't any particular merit of mine, that I was saying something wise or amazing. I was just walking down the street wearing a robe, and I told somebody to be kinder to herself, and that opportunity was there because of because of this whole history of from the Buddha down to us, with the robes and the teachings and the everything that we recognize. We represent something different, and I really appreciate that about wearing the robes. And it's also just amusing sometimes. What people shout at you from cars. Way.
What others? Do others have thoughts or want to share? Or how did someone share the Dhamma with you? Either of our Anagarikas is welcome to talk if they'd like to.
Yes.
Shaking heads.
Yeah.
Or Paula, also welcome to talk. Paula's here on tech support, but is getting herself organized to talk.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, I think you hear me coming through.
I think, yeah, you need to mute your speaker. You're getting an echo.
My speaker. Hold on, this might not be as easy as I thought.
I need to give you one of these mics instead of.
Sure. Does that work? Yeah. Okay, does this work now? Okay. Yeah, I think so much has been said, and for me, really, it comes down to presence. I think it was the first time I saw a monastic. It was just like, whoa, just that presence. And in this world where we move so quickly, moving slowly and intentionally, and just thinking that today is Giving Tuesday, and generosity so often isn't just in giving monetary things. It's in maybe giving a smile or the benefit of the doubt, and maybe not jumping to the worst possible ideas about someone's intentions, or just letting someone in when they want to pass you in traffic, and all of those types of things. And I think in sharing the Dhamma, it's a lot of the presence. And there's a dignity to taking things slowly and intentionally. And I think when I have shared with friends and family, they've come to me recently because of the political climate of how can I keep my heart open when there's so much divisiveness. And so often the answer is compassion for ourselves and for the others who are suffering. And I think that's shown so much in the teachers that we have and in the Sangha of the compassion and metta. And yeah, I think it's just surrounding yourself with people who are on the path and others want to see how you got that peace, even if it's a little bit of peace. Yeah, so I think that's what I have to share. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Paula.
Paula. Yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like Karina's example about the cats is good. I've heard that the Buddhist philosopher Taylor Swift has a song about this.
I didn't know that.
I haven't actually heard this song. It came out after I came into monastic life, but I have seen it discussed on Buddhist discussion forums. A line from a Taylor Swift song that says, "Karma is a cat." And what does she mean by that? She means that, you know, for a cat to come and like be comfortable sitting next to you, what do you have to do? You have to be good to that cat. You know, you have to be a solid person that that cat wants to come sit next to. That's your action. That's your, you know, something that you're doing that allows that being to come and like want to be there with you. And that's what it means that karma is a cat.
Because the cat is doing what the cat wants to do.
The cat is doing what the cat wants to do. Cats do that. You know, we've been trying to, we have a cat who's been coming around here at the monastery. We've been trying to convince her to go into the nice warm place that we set up for her, as opposed to the very cold places that she's been hanging out. And you know, cats do what they do. She's not been convinced yet. But yeah, if you can convince a cat, if you can just by being a good solid presence that they want to be near, then that's what that is. That's your karma. And I think, you know, this is how we are with people in the world, that through our actions, through the way that we show up, the way that we relate to them, then that will, you know, potentially bring them to want to come and be close and, you know, learn something or be together with you or share or, you know, or trust you enough to lead you forward or, you know, whatever it is, depending on who that person is. And so,
yeah, I think the other piece then is like, and when someone does draw near and is interested, how do we respond? You know, thinking about the way, you know, in the story of Sanghamitta and when Anula Tisa, you know, expressed her intention and expressed her wish to have more of the Dhamma, but then everyone who was involved in that chain of making that happen, like really readily responded, like, yes, I'll help you. Yes, I'll help you. Even for Venerable Sanghamitta, that it meant leaving India and going to Sri Lanka, and she never went back. She stayed there for the rest of her life and leaving her family. You know, maybe some of us don't need to go that far. That's not what is being asked of us, but you know, just to, when someone does express curiosity, to not say, oh, I'm too busy, or I, you know, don't want to talk about it or whatever, but like how can we really hear that interest in the Dhamma for this really precious thing that it is, of someone saying like, oh, how can I be better? How can I live life in a different way that will make me happier and make me a better influence on the world? And how do we really respond to that very kind of actively and responsively, and, you know, give what we can and give what is available for us to give in that situation. You know, and obviously, you know, we've put ourselves in a situation where that is a big part of what we do. I think for all of us, I think that's an important, you know, just to say like, how precious is it when someone someone's heart is turning towards the Dhamma, but then like how, and maybe that's really tenuous, and maybe it's only going to be a brief moment, right? And like, how do we respond to that quickly and carry that energy forward? That maybe then that grows.
We do need to be careful. Not to misrepresent
Always.
the Dhamma.
Yes.
Of course, but there's also that. There's also sort of knowing our own limits in terms of what we do know and understand, and what we've what we've heard from others, what we've heard from the suttas, what we know for ourselves. These things can be quite different. And so I think there does need to be some care about that. And I think about being in monastic life, then they think you're an expert. And so for us, we have to be very, very, very careful about just speaking as clearly as we can about how do we know what we know, and where is this coming from, and what are our limitations. And for all of this, I think this is good because we're not all arahants. We don't all have the authority that Arahant Sanghamitta Theri did to be spreading the Dhamma. But we all have something that brought us here tonight, and that's it's something that we can share. And personally, if somebody comes to me and says, "Tell me the Dhamma, give me a Dhamma talk," then I feel, oh, I don't know, say to that. But if they come and have a question of like, what do you know about this? And I can just say, here's what I know about that. Here's what I've studied about it. Here's what I've experienced about it myself. Here's the things I don't know about that. Then that's really a wonderful opening. And I really appreciate when people have that kind of a question, because also I can learn from that, and or sometimes find something in myself that I didn't even realize was there in response to that.
Yeah, I think for me, as Venerable Kachayana said, we are not experts in everything, for sure. I think it's easy to be able to look at my own experience and say, like, how have I personally been transformed by my practice? And where is somewhere where I used to suffer a lot and now I suffer much less because of my practice? Or someplace I really struggled that now is like much more smooth and open and clear. And there can be all manner of intellectual things and details, and like Karina said, all of these things that I may not remember the details exactly, or may not be able to speak on it authoritatively, but from my own experience, I can very clearly say, these are places where I personally have been transformed. And I think all of us who are practicing and having found the Dhamma effective in our own lives, we all have those places where we can speak like truly authoritatively because we know for ourselves how our lives have improved. And I think also when you're speaking from that place, people also really feel that, and they feel that it's coming from genuine. They're seeing someone talk about genuine transformation, like Daniel said, like that people can see how he has changed. I think that's really it's not like, here's how you should change, because that's always dangerous territory, but it's like, here's how I have changed for the better. And maybe someone else can learn something from that. I think it's really powerful. If anyone else have thoughts? I wonder, does Venerable Satima want to speak again? I don't know if she's.
I think she might have. Oh, she's still online.
Still online.
But anyway, yes, inviting anyone. Further reflections from those who already shared, or anyone who hasn't spoken yet. Very welcome. No.
Shall we go to chanting?
Shall we go to chanting? Well, do you have any final reflection? How do we bring this back to Sanghamitta Theri? I do see a hand from Juno.
Ah, hey, Juno.
Thanks, Juno.
Okay, quickly again, I'm sorry. I just want to say I'm taking notes. Everything everybody says is just gold. You are all so wonderful and wise. And I just love you all. I mean, it's just really it's just it's just wonderful. I feel so lucky to just even be getting these emails and getting the link to be invited to these discussions. Every single person has said something that has inspired me, and I love you all. I love you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Juno. We want to appreciate Juno, who's at our hermitage helping to prevent it from getting moldy over the winter, which we just enormously appreciate.
We do, yes.
It's a huge service for the community and for all of us. Yeah, I think bringing it back to Sanghamitta Theri, as Venerable Kachayana said, we are not daughters of emperors and arahants, and are not being asked to bring the Dhamma to 1,000 leaders of a foreign country. I think when the request was made of her, she just responded quickly and did what she could. And I think that's all we can do is really recognize like what do we have to offer and offer that and not less than that. As I said to someone just this week, it's like, oh, I can only do a little. It's like, yes, but like do the little bit, right? It's a huge difference between like saying, oh, I can only do a little and choosing not to do anything. But to say like, no, let's do what we can. And if it feels like just a little, at least you've done a little. And I think also that's how we recognize our capability and how we grow and how we then learn to be able to do more. And as Dham said, the fact that the Dhamma is here at all is just an amazing treasure, and a lot of things had to come together for that to be possible. And let's contribute what we can now and not less than that.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well, I do see a hand up from Karina. Yes, please.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to say one thing, which is just appreciation for for the lives you've chosen, for the space you hold. Because I feel like as a layperson, I try to protect myself and I choose, I'm like, what do I expose myself to? What do I involve myself with? What do I not? And inevitably, it's a little coarser. But I appreciate that I can, when I need to be nourished, I know I can tune in, plug in to y'all, and I can be nourished. So thank you for holding that space. I can always tune into to goodness.
Thank you for saying that. And I think it actually, it's mutually nourishing. Like these groups to feel like what we're doing actually is meaningful. It's helpful to have people who tune in. So really appreciating all of you here this evening.
Yeah, and just to reflect on what I was reflecting when Daniel was speaking about, how unusual or how rare it can be to find people who are just being kind. An enormous benefit of our lives here is that actually almost everyone we encounter is kind. And part of living on others' generosity and living on the kindness of others is that people may be doing all kinds of things out in their lives, but when they come to us, it's when they are being kind and generous. And so to a huge extent, that is our experience of the world. And obviously we're aware that many other things are out there. But I think, we have just absolute certain lived experience that there is so much kindness and generosity in the world, and that's really present because that is most of what we are encountering. And then I think that gives us a lot of strength, as Karina said, gives us a lot of strength to then be able to share that as much as we can with others, and just like reinforce those things in the world, because they really are present, even if there are many other things also present.
Right. Well, thank you everyone for this portion of our program. We're going to have some final chanting, but before that, a couple announcements. One is that this is the first of 2 Sanghamitta Day programs for us. The next one will be on Sunday. We're going to have Sanghamitta themed meditation in the morning of Sangha recollection of the Sangha, the Arahant Sangha. And what are we doing in the afternoon? We're having a sutta study.
Some kind of sutta study related to Sanghamitta.
And then?
Yet to be decided.
And then special.
Yes, and then special after that, planning on having Bodhi Puja. So just brief chanting to honor the Bodhi tree, which is part of what is traditionally done at this time of year. And then also for people who would like to come in person, then we will have opportunity for sitting in meditation together with the relics of Venerable Sanghamitta Theri and Anulatisa Theri. So here we have the relics of both of them, which came to Dhammadharini this year, and opportunity for meditation together. And so if the weather is good, we'll be outside in the Dana Sala, and if it is cold and rainy, we'll be inside in the meditation hall. If we are inside, people will need to wear masks indoors, just to protect members of the community that have vulnerable health. And yeah, we very much welcome if anyone wants to come here and join us.
Right. Yeah, so we've been blessed this year by the arrival of the sacred relics of first these 2 Arahant Theris, of Arahant Sanghamitta Theri and Arahant Anulatisa Theri, who was the first Bhikkhuni ordained in Sri Lanka. And so they came to us in August at the Dhammadharini's 20th anniversary, and further Arahant Theri relics have arrived since then. And there will just be this opportunity to spend time together, as I know some people have appreciated and requested, and we've a couple times already, but wanting to offer that again in honor especially of this special day. Okay, I see a hand from Richard, and then I have one more announcement, and then we'll go to our final chanting.
When everything's done and people logging off, can I talk to you about Dana?
Sure.
A question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to waste other people's time. That's why.
Okay, at the end sounds good.
Sure. Okay, we'll stay on a couple minutes at the end. Right. Well, one more thing to announce is, pretty soon, some of us will be headed to India. And so sort of the reverse of Sanghamitta's mission. There will be a very special pilgrimage from Nepal to India from December 16th to 23rd. There's a group of about 100 bhikkhunis and friends who will be taking this walk. It's not quite a walk. There will be some ceremonial walking as part of the pilgrimage. It will be largely on a bus, but following the route that was walked by another great Arahant Bhikkhuni, that is Mahapajapati Gautami Theri, the founder of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, who walked this 300-kilometer trail from the palace in Kapilavatthu, her hometown, to where the Buddha was at Vaishali to request her ordination. And so we're working to establish this new trail. And so Taloka is requesting that we announce a special way to support this pilgrimage, which is socks. That there is an opportunity to support the dana of socks for all of the participants in this pilgrimage, including a number who are going to be undertaking temporary seminary ordination and need their robes, and also their hats and scarves and monastic colored socks. And so, anyway, just to announce this possibility, please contact us for further information about this. But just, you know, it's so many different ways that we all try our best to support the Dhamma and the flourishing of the Sangha in the world. And this is just one, is that anyone feels inspired to offer a sock in support of this pilgrimage, please let us know. Some have already been offered, but you too can participate. And with that, we want to come to our closing. And with appreciation for all of you, for your practice, for your presence, and also with honor, especially for Arahant Sanghamitta Theri and the Queen Anula, later the Bhikkhuni, Arahant Theri Anulatisa, who requested her to come. And we are graced with sacred relics of both of these great Arahant women of the past sitting next to me. And we'd like to do a chant of veneration for them. This comes from Sri Lanka. It's veneration for the stupas of these two great women. And so we'll chant that briefly together. And then after that, we will be dedicating the merits of our practice together with the verses of sharing and aspiration, which many of you may know. Oh, well, all right, get on the screen. So, just two brief verses here. We'll start with Namo Tassa, homage to the Buddha. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Maharanyo Uttiyana Mena Pakato Mahamekawanang Pase Atigaravena. Sabha Artitatu Yonita Petva Kareya. Sanghamitta Theri Tupang Vandami Sirasadarang. I bow down to the Sanghamitta Theri Pagoda at Mahamega Forest area, which was respectfully erected by the great king called Uttiya, enshrining all bone relics. And the next, for Arhat Anula. Katang punyang kusulena chitang patwa patama arahanta bhavang paditang viyasi halati pikanang maha anula tupang namami. Having accumulated positive energy with a skillful mind and attaining enlightenment, she, Anula Theri, became like a lamp to the Sinhalese islanders. I bow down to that Anula Theri stupa. Let's bow together. For our closing, we'd like to dedicate the merits of our practice together here today. And we'll put this on the screen for you to chant along. Be a little bit bigger. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration.
Through the goodness that arises from my practice,
May my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana. In every kind of birth, may I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble Lord. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. And we'd like to share special blessings with Sri Lanka, under much duress with cyclone floods and landslides. They all help one another and recover well and quickly with virtue and insight. So this new homeland, chosen homeland of Sanghamitta Theri, wishing all well and rejoicing in their coming together to help during this time of difficulty.
Sad.
That we can close by paying respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha together. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivadimi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. All right. So thank you everyone for your patient listening.
Thank you, everyone.
We can end the live stream now and we'll hang out and talk with Richard. And